Hello and welcome to NHK Newsline. It's now 7 a.m. on Saturday, April 21st. I'm Raja Pradhan in Tokyo. We begin with breaking news out of North Korea. The country's state-run media says its leader Kim Jong-un said there's no longer the need for the nation to develop nuclear and ballistic missiles. Kim reportedly made the remarks at the ruling Workers' Party's Central Committee meeting on Friday. Kim also said the nuclear test site in the northeastern region should be abandoned. This comes 1 week before Kim has a summit meeting with South Korean President Moon Jae-in and a possible meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. An official in Seoul says the two Koreas have set up a hotline between President Moon and the North's leader Kim Jong-un. That means the two will be able to speak to each other directly in the run-up to their first meeting next Friday.
The line was established Friday. At 3:41 p.m., there was a test call between the presidential office and the office of the North's State Affairs Commission.
The official says the two sides exchanged calls for over 4 minutes, and there was no problem. The hotline is the first of its kind between leaders of the two Koreas, although government and military officials have had communication channels before. Policymakers in Pyongyang appear to be gearing up for the inter-Korean summit and perhaps an upcoming meeting with U.S. President Trump. State-run media said the top members of the ruling Workers' Party were planning to meet Friday for the first time in 6 months. Kim Jong-un appears to have struck a conciliatory stance ahead of his summits with South Korea and the U.S., but American officials believe the North continues to carry out cyber attacks. A special assistant to the U.S. president said evidence suggests the North is targeting U.S. infrastructure facilities and major firms.
Part of our national defense strategy said that there will be times where we feel attacked in the U.S. and we will respond with force. An attack can be in the physical world, it can be in the cyber world.
Joyce also said North Korea is continuing to carry out cyber thefts to compensate for the impact of economic sanctions.
They've also gone after just cryptocurrency wallets, like Bitcoin wallets, where people store their online digital currency. And they've been pretty successful at stealing and emptying those wallets. Mm-hmm. And when a single Bitcoin is worth thousands of dollars, it doesn't take too many successes to really make a lot of money.
Good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news, and this is news, pretty stunning news breaking at this hour, surprising leaders around the world. North Korea announcing it will stop conducting nuclear tests and launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles. A source telling our Will Ripley that Kim Jong-un now realizes the best path forward is to open up the country and normalize relations. I mean, just imagine what I'm saying about North Korea. The source adding that Kim believes he is finally being recognized by the international community. And President Trump has just tweeted in response to this announcement, quote, North Korea has agreed to suspend all nuclear tests and close up a major test site. This is very good news for North Korea and the world. Big progress. Look forward to our summit. Now, this announcement is coming just as the administration is finalizing plans for the summit, for the president to possibly meet personally, face-to-face with Kim Jong-un. And that meeting is said to take place by next month. And, you know, here we are. It's already April 20th. It also follows the CIA Director Mike Pompeo's secret visit to North Korea earlier this month for preliminary talks with Kim. Barbara Starr is out front live at the Pentagon. And Barbara, I mean, it is pretty stunning, you know, the reporting here that Kim Jong-un has decided the best path forward for North Korea is to normalize relations and open up. I mean, this is a surprise on so many levels tonight.
It is. Good evening, Erin. I think it's fair to say here at the Pentagon, officials are cautious and watching. But tonight, U.S. satellites, aircraft, missile defenses, and 28,000 troops remain on the Korean Peninsula, watching very carefully. They do not expect to see the U.S. simply back away from its effort to keep an eye on North Korea, to defend South Korea and Japan. There will still be, for some time, a very vigorous effort. The real question, of course, is why is Kim doing this? U.S. military intelligence will tell you he is feeling the pressure of economic sanctions, but opening up his country is offset by one big worry for Kim: how to survive, how to keep himself in power and his regime in power. The U.S. intelligence community continues to believe, at least now, Kim very much driven by his own survival. So we will have to see how all of this plays out. Perhaps most interesting today at the Pentagon, the Japanese defense minister was here and said that he thought the recent missile strike in Syria also was a message that perhaps the North Koreans heard about the ability of U.S. military power to get into airspace of its enemies and enact in military action. If Kim heard that, it may play a role in his decision-making.
Obviously, it could be the single biggest successful takeaway of what happened in Syria over the long term. If that's true, that's pretty stunning. And of course, it comes before President Trump has even had this meeting with Kim Jong-un, right? The meeting that apparently is supposed to happen in the next few weeks. And of course, the president just days ago vowed to walk out of the meeting if the talks were not fruitful. Jeff Zeleny is with the president in West Palm Beach, Florida. And Jeff, what are we hearing from the White House? Because, all he said is, I'll walk if I don't like what I'm hearing. And then you just got a big concession from North Korea. Pretty much, it seems, in exchange for nothing. The president, obviously, extremely happy about this tonight.
Aaron, no question the White House views this as good news. In fact, the president's saying that himself just a few moments ago on social media, on Twitter. He said, I look forward to the summit, again, hailing this news as good news. So that is the early reaction we are getting from White House officials. But Aaron, if you take stock of the president's tone in his tweet this evening versus really only a few months ago when he was essentially mocking Kim Jong-un as Rocket Man, he was belittling him. Now, fast forward to this. It seems to me that, there's no question there has been sort of a cautious optimism when you talk to White House officials. Will this summit actually happen? It is looking more and more like it actually will. Of course, many hurdles up until that point. Where will it be held? Exactly what the agenda will be. Will Kim agree to denuclearize the peninsula? Yeah. But there's no question that the president and the White House believe that they are on solid footing here, and there seems to be good reason to believe that. This, of course, was a central focus of conversation here this week when the president met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe here in Florida. So there is early optimism. The question, though, when they sit down face to face, can he broker this deal? Certainly the highest stakes gamble of his presidency.
It certainly will be. And of course, if successful, a huge achievement for this president. Jeff Zeleny, thank you. Out front now, former CIA intelligence officer David Priest and former Army commanding general for Europe and the 7th Army, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. General Hertling, let me start with you. I mean, obviously, it's a big announcement from North Korea tonight. How significant is it to you?
You used the right word earlier, Aaron, when you said stunning. This is a significant development. I would be a little bit more measured right now to see what happens next. A little bit of calm, not so much breathlessness. If it does play out, and there's the possibility that it will, because there's been a lot of movement. The president's been with the Prime Minister of Japan. Kim Jong-un has been with the president of China. There's been a lot of discussion about this, a lot of influencers. One of the things we haven't talked about is people are talking about KJU's influence by the missile strike in Syria is the fact that his economy is in tatters. Yeah. So I think that's persuading him to perhaps do some things now that he hasn't done in the past. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he does have a missile program. For the first time in a long time, he actually has missiles and potential atomic weapons that work. So he can deal a little bit more, as we've talked about before, from a position of strength. So I think that there's a lot of factors that are coming together in this very interesting inflection point that's occurring right now. David,
what do you read into this? I mean, obviously, announcing they're going to immediately stop tests, it's significant. Obviously, they haven't done tests in the past few weeks. Who knows whether they were about to do one. But do you believe this is a huge breakthrough, or are you skeptical?
I was trained as an intelligence officer, and skepticism is in our blood. We subscribe to the belief that Ronald Reagan talked about: trust, but verify. And in this case, we don't even have the trust. We don't have the relationship built up with the North Koreans to trust what he says. He's announced this to the North Korean people. That is big. That is unusual. But what has he announced? He's announced he's walking back something that he wasn't doing frequently until 2016 and 2017. Right. There were tests every 3 years or so. It's only recently that those have stepped up. Now he's saying, I'm not going to do that, which I wasn't doing a few years ago at this pace. We really need to see what he's willing to do to step up and get that economic relief that he so needs in his country.
Right, and to get the verification, because, of course, when you say trust but verify, you think about Iran, which the president so resoundly, criticizes. I'm not even using a strong enough word, but obviously, you could be in a similar position here at the end of this. How are you going to verify? General, what do you make of this, though, when it comes to what you read into Kim Jong-un and his perception of his own stability, right? Even recently, we hear this administration, Pompeo, no, I'm not worried about regime change. Look, we all know perfectly well that the United States wants to get rid of Kim Jong-un. But to get a deal done, they're going to have to say, no, we're going to back this guy who's murdered, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of his own people, and let him stay in power in order to let this go forward. That's the way it's going to be?
Yeah, I'm with David on this and being very skeptical. That's why I said we've got to take a more measured tone. We shouldn't get too excited about it just yet, Aaron. And I think we have to look at the recent history. This is not a good guy. He has killed people with chemical weapons in airports. He has, starved his own people. He has journalists. He has some of our citizens in jail. So I think, again, we have to let this percolate a little bit and develop. And I don't think we should be rushing into this as fast as some people are doing. It's exciting news. There is the potential, but there's a lot to be given, and there should be a whole lot of tit for tat on this one. It can't just be, hey, he's giving things up, let's rush into it.
Yeah, let me build on that,
I would suggest he's disappointed people in the past.
Yeah, let me build on that. As hard as it is to get inside the president's head, as hard as it is to get inside Donald Trump's head, it's even harder to get inside Kim Jong-un's head. And we don't know how seriously the status of North Korea is affecting him. To me, the big question mark here is how far is he willing to go once he realizes the consequences of opening up North Korea? Letting in investment, letting in South Korean goods and ideas, that's a road he's seen before. Libya decided to give up its weapons of mass destruction. And what happened? The West ended up undermining Gaddafi anyway. That's a lesson he's sure to have learned.
Right, because, General, that's the reality. Back to the point I was making. Everybody knows regime change is the ultimate goal here of pretty much everybody, maybe but Kim Jong-un, maybe China, but basically everybody else, including the United States. So they can, in the interim, say it's not the focus. But is anybody going to believe it?
Well, there's going to be trust and verification on both sides, Aaron, and I think you're exactly right. There's a lot that goes into this. I'm an old guy. I was on the border between East and West Germany when the wall came down, and it staggered everybody then in 1989. This seems to be one of those same kind of things where there's a lot of stuff happening right now. Yeah. In 89, it was a whole lot different scenario. In this time, I'm not sure we can quite yet trust Kim Jong-un to do exactly what he says he's about to do. He's under a lot of pressure, but he also, I think, is very worried about some of the things he's seen within the last couple months.
Well, we've all been to that border, even as just that moment of being there. But I mean, to imagine even the glimmer of possibility of unifying the Koreas in our lifetime, I think is something many of us didn't think we'd even be talking about, whether with skepticism or not. Thank you both so very much. I appreciate your time. And next.